Welcome to the week ahead. I'm your host for the next half an hour. My name is Ibrahim Sani. We're doing this live straight from my homes to yours. This show shall explore some of the items that will happen in the week ahead so that you can better plan and perhaps try to see where the opportunities may lie when the Monday hit us in just a few hours from now. As per previously discussed, the parliamentary sitting has been delayed by 1 week, and the House was supposed to convene tomorrow on September 6th. However, the announcement has been made that the parliamentary sitting shall now convene on September 13th. Now, I'm not trying to draw some conclusions here, but it's also worth noting that the Prime Minister, Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri, 1 week ago was confirmed to be in a close contact with a COVID-19 positive individual or individuals and has therefore needed to confine himself to a 2 week quarantine. Therefore, it kind of makes sense why the September 13th date was chosen. And the idea here is that they will sit for 2 extra days. And the question of whether or not there will be or there won't be a confidence vote is still a subject matter of concern. Today, the Attorney General has said that the need or the requirement for us to have a confidence vote is no longer needed. However, it has been rebuked by the leader of opposition, saying that this is going against the wishes of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong or the king, and therefore might see it as a derhaka kind of notion. So that story will be a theme that you will encounter over the next 1 week, whether or not there will be or there won't be a confidence vote. Sticking to some of the themes of the parliamentary session that will take place, we're going to be exploring some institutional reforms and some institutional ideas that has been brought forth, not just by the government, but individuals surrounding the parliamentary sitting. So our first story for this evening will be on the notion of whether or not the debt ceiling will be increased. Finance Minister Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz proposed to raise the statutory debt limit to 65% of GDP from the current 60%. Although the debt to GDP ratio is now at about 58%, he said that the figure would likely increase to above 60% by this year's end. And therefore, the idea for us to pursue a 65% debt ceiling is paramount, given the commitment by the government to support some of the people and businesses.
He will present the proposal to the cabinet next week before bringing it to Parliament.
Today, still have room below 60%. As I mentioned just now, 58% of the statutory debt limit. And even if we breach it, it will be just a marginal breach, but again, it's a breach. So therefore, we have to go to Parliament.
Zafrul also ruled out bringing back the Goods and Services Tax GST in Budget 2022, as the government is focused on reviving the economy. He said the government is looking at ways to enhance its revenue and to address the issue of revenue leakages.
So the second story is still about institutional reforms, this time by another member of cabinet, the de facto law minister, or his official job title, minister in the Prime Minister's Department in charge of law, Datuk Sri Wan Junaidi Tunku Jaafar. He has pledged that for several parliamentary reforms, this might take place in this parliamentary sitting. Among them is to make the Dewan Rakyat an independent institution. This is following a discussion with Dewan Negara President Tan Sri Dr. Rais Yatim and Parliamentary Dewan Rakyat Speaker Datuk Azhar Azizan Harun or Ad Harun last week. And of course, this also, the fact that the law minister is saying that they want to make the parliament an institutional reform change, including making the parliament an independent institution, kind of indicates that this government acknowledges that the parliament isn't yet an independent institution and there is a need for the parliament to be an independent institution. So that is an idea that we should really explore further because this is mea culpa by the government saying that there's something that needs to be changed when it comes to parliamentary reforms in the country. So what we can expect is that Datuk Sri Wan Junaidi, the law minister, said that both the Speaker of the Dewan Rakyat and the Dewan Negara already welcomed the proposal, and both of them are ready to lead the transformation of the parliament.
He said 3 main issues were discussed. The first was to revive the Parliamentary Service Act. The PSA was repealed by former Prime Minister Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad in 1992. Restoring it would give Parliament more independence with the ability to manage itself administratively and financially instead of being under the purview of the executive as it is now. The second proposal is to create a new Act of Parliament to replace the Houses of Parliament Privilege and Powers Act 1952. He said the existing act is outdated and no longer suitable for the political landscape in the 21st century. Wan Junaidi said there was also a discussion to further amend the standing orders and rules for both Houses of Parliament. He said many of the rules may no longer be suitable in today's environment, and amendments were needed to both modernize Parliament and empower it. Wan Junaidi said he will be submitting a report on his proposals to the Cabinet for endorsement.
So the third story is not so much about the parliamentary reforms per se, but the kind of things that are currently happening in and around the country when it comes to state assemblies. In this instance, 18-year-olds in Penang will now be eligible to contest for state seats in the next election. The assembly, i.e. the Penang State Assembly, passed a bill to amend the state's constitution today to allow for the eligibility of candidates for state seats to go from 21 years old to 18 years old.
The age cap to be a member of the Legislative Assembly was changed after bipartisan support from the 40-seat assembly. Bagan Jenmal Assemblyperson Soon Lip Chi said the amendment involves amending Article 12 of the Penang State Constitution, which concerns the requirement to be a member of the House. Penang is the 7th state to approve the eligibility age of candidates for state assembly seats from 21 to 18 after Sabah, Perlis, Terengganu, Sarawak, Kelantan and Perak. However, only 2 states, Sabah and Perak, have put in force the laws to lower the age cap to 18.
Also, for the fourth story, it relates to both electoral reforms and the things that are happening at the state. This time, it's in Sarawak because the High Court in Kuching, Sarawak, last week ordered the Election Commission to implement Undi 18 by the end of this year, 2021. The Judicial Commissioner, Alexander Siao Ho Wai, said that the EC's decision to delay lowering the age of 18 to September 2022 was actually irrational and illegal.
He granted 2 court orders. First, to reject the EC and the government's decision to delay lowering the minimum voting age in Malaysia from the initial 21 to 18 to September 2022. Second is a mandamus order compelling the government and EC to take all necessary steps for the constitutional amendment involving Undi 18 to come into operation by December 31st, 2021. Today was the delivery of the High Court's decision for 5 Malaysian youths' lawsuit or judicial review application to seek the immediate enforcement of a 2019 constitutional amendment. They are a part of the Undi 18 movement that successfully advocated for the lower voting age and includes 4 Sarawak-born youths: Ivan Alexander Ong, Vivian Desi George, Tiffany Wee Ki Ying, Chang Sui Earn and Sharifah Mahira Said Haizir. The right to vote is directly affected as they are aged between 18 to 20. They had filed the lawsuit on May 4th and had obtained leave for judicial review on May 28, which led to the hearings on July 27th and August 13th before the decision is announced today. Separately, 18 Malaysian youths had also on April 2nd filed a similar lawsuit in the High Court in Kuala Lumpur and had on June 17 won for judicial review. The court is scheduled to deliver its decision on the youth judicial review on October 21st.
We'll go for a short break. We'll continue after this. Welcome back. This is the week ahead. I am Ibrahim Sani. For the next few minutes, we're going to be deep diving into one particular parliamentary reform that we can expect to be heavily discussed and heavily debated for this entire week, which is, of course, recall elections. One way to prevent party hopping is to hold recall elections. This was made by the former Deputy Dewan Rakyat Speaker, Datuk Sri Azalina Osman, and she said that she will submit a motion to Speaker Ad Harun to table a recall bill in the upcoming parliamentary sitting.
The Pengerang MP said she was glad that Prime Minister Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob had discussed with the opposition bloc on introducing an anti-hopping bill, but said a recall act would be much more effective in holding MPs accountable for party hopping. Recall election is a system that allows voters in a constituency to remove their elected representative before the end of his or her term. In a statement earlier, Azalina said it was concerning that after 64 years of independence, incidences of party hopping still remain among elected reps. Azalina also said she intends to form a caucus on parliamentary reform and multi-party democracy among interested MPs.
So this topic has been discussed amongst the NGO circles and amongst individuals that are concerned about party hopping. We've seen how this has damaged the electoral system quite severely. When you go to the party polls during a general election and you vote for a particular candidate, you're not just voting for herself or himself, you're actually voting for the party as well. But the intent of the voter might not necessarily be translated into what will transpire over the next 5 years. So because of this mismatch between what has been voted for and what will take place over the next 5 years the elected representative is doing, there has to be some form of mechanism of accountability. So what Azalina Osman is trying to do is trying to say things like, if there is a party hopping that is going to happen, we're going to make that particular election null and void. We're going to have another election. Now, that's something that is being echoed by some NGOs. In this case, Thomas Phan of Bersih 2.0, because he says that while he welcomes the call for recall elections, some form of mechanism needs to be put in place to hold these elected rep accountable. Thomas Phan from Bersih 2.0 urges the Prime Minister, Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob, to support recall elections as a tool to inculcate a sense of accountability amongst politicians.
According to him, recall election would return the mandate to voters by giving them the right to decide what happens when the elected representative defects.
Recall election as proposed by YB Azalina is that. So when somebody hop, the mechanism of recall is that the voter who elected that person have the right to either sack the MP or to affirm the decision to defect.
Thomas said under the system, voters who supported their MP leaving his or her party need not vote in the recall election. He exemplifies the system by referring to a sitting member of parliament. In this example, Simpang Renggam MP Dr. Mazli Malik.
You need a 1% of registered voter to start the process. So once you collect 1% signature, then the election commission will say, okay, now the next step is you need to collect up to 40% of registered voter of Simpang Renggam. If there are 40% of registered voter of Simpang Renggam want to remove you, then the seat will be vacated and a by-election will be called where YB Masli he can run again.
The fate of the recall election bill is still obscure at the moment, as Pengerang MP Datuk Sri Azalina Osman Said said she has submitted the motion to Dewan Rakyat Speaker Dato' Azhar Azizan Harun for tabling. Despite that, there may be some appetite for reforms, as the de facto law minister Datuk Sri Dr. Wan Junaidi Tuanku Jaafar said earlier this week that introducing anti-party hopping laws were among his priorities during his tenure.
So in addition to this, Thomas Phan says that the mechanism may not necessarily be effective in deterring defections amongst MPs if the introduction of the anti-party hopping law is not being introduced. Let's hear him out.
One of the reasons for that is Article 10 of the Federal Constitution, which states that all citizens have the right to form associations.
That has always been the legal barrier to the standard anti-hopping law, which Penang has enacted, I think, since 2012. They have the law, so they threatened to use it recently when two PKR and two Bersatu Adun came out from Pakatan. They threatened to vacate their seat, but that case was taken to court, and I think it's still pending. And I think Article 10 will still be a barrier. The second problem with anti-hopping law is that it can't deal with a party that leaves a coalition. Like what happened when Bersatu left Pakatan. They are still a party, so it doesn't apply to those who remain in Bersatu, but they left Pakatan Harapan. But it applies to those who choose to leave their party because they don't agree with the decision of the leadership.
He added that another flaw in the law is that it strengthens the position of the party leadership.
The party leader can threaten anyone who doesn't toe his line, submit to his will, with a dismissal. And once you're dismissed, then your seat is vacated. So hopping law is automatic also. So the moment people hop, whether it's for a good reason or a bad reason, the seat is vacated and there's a by-election. It's automatic. Recall election, on the other hand, is not automatic. It is returning the mandate to the voters of that constituency.
We'll continue right after this break. You're watching The Week Ahead. This is broadcasted live because we just simply like the whole notion that things are on the fly all the time. We shall explore the last two stories, which is going to be revolving around COVID. And of course, today, over 300 cases of death has been reported. We're now registering well above the 18,000 deaths in the country. And of course, when that happens, we want to project what will happen towards the end of this week. It is suffice to say that 20,000 deaths from COVID-19 will be experienced in Malaysia by the time we hit the end of this week. And that's not remarkable at all. That's scary, in fact. So we want to understand about what is going to happen for the country when it comes to the National Recovery Plan. So our next story will revolve around some of the states that will move towards the National Recovery Plan and whether or not it is wise for them to do so. But facts remain. Melaka will move into the phase 2 of the National Recovery Plan. Negeri Sembilan has entered phase 3 yesterday. In an announcement last week, Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said that the government will reopen the tourism sector in several destinations under the travel bubble program, beginning with Langkawi.
Langkawi Island was chosen as a pilot project to reopen to local tourists from September 16th. Other tourist destinations will also be allowed to operate when local vaccination rate reaches 80%. Ismail Sabri also said that today, for the first time in months, the rate of infection or R0 nationwide is below 1.0, signalling that the country is on track towards recovery. He added, based on the average vaccination rate in each state, 80% of the adult population will be vaccinated by the end of this month, while a 100% vaccination rate can be achieved by the end of October.
So the issue here is whether or not is it safe for us to move from one phase to another when we see 20,000 daily cases. We've seen how bed occupancy rate both at the normal ward and high dependency ward is high, ICU ward is high. Just earlier today, I went to Cheetah Mall to buy something for my wife. It's her birthday today. I was scared because there was a lot of people, as if there weren't any COVID going on. So that whole notion of whether or not people are sick and tired of the lockdown and they have to, get out and about, that's one angle that you need to take. But also whether or not we are indeed safe, just because the adults, at least in some cities, including that of Klang Valley, has reached over 70%. But that might not necessarily be enough. Children are going to be vaccinated soon. In fact, it's going to start tomorrow. Children or teenagers between the ages of 12 to 17 will start their vaccination program. So our insistence here is for you to check. If you have a dependent like myself, I have a teenage daughter, check your MySejahtera account whether or not the appointment date will be given. Our final story now will be on long COVID and issues that surround it, including that of dementia, because emerging research has shown that neurological impact of COVID-19 can accelerate dementia symptoms. Paulo Barbarino from Alzheimer's Institute International said that the revelation should be a cause for concern, as COVID-19 could further add to the dementia problem if symptoms are ignored.
It seems clear now that some of the symptoms of COVID-19, like the loss of smell, for example, are symptoms of a neurological nature. So what is happening in this case is that there is the possibility of the barrier between the blood and the brain being broken as a consequence of getting COVID-19. And when that happens, certain factors that would accelerate your cognitive decline accelerate. So it looks like COVID-19 is acting as a brake in this barrier.
Paula added that while dementia rates may drop temporarily as a result of the high number of deaths of people with dementia due to COVID-19, it may not provide the overall picture of the actual situation. This is because in the longer term, the numbers of people with dementia could rise significantly due to the neurological impact of COVID-19.
We currently have 55 million people living with dementia. We thought that as a consequence of this pandemic, and because it strikes so much the people that have dementia, we reckon 25 to 45%. We thought that, in fact, the prevalence of people would go down as so many had been stricken by it. But it seems likely, also given the age of those that are now seeking diagnosis as a consequence, possibly, of having had COVID-19, that this number is going to get higher.
Awareness is key, as Paula urged for governments to prioritize research on the subject so to avoid being further overwhelmed by the oncoming long-term effects of the pandemic.
Government should be aware of that. COVID-19 has been considered a disease of the respiratory system so far, and people are worried with consequences to do with the lungs primarily. But the reality is different. I mean, there has been a lot of research done on what kind of organs are hit by COVID-19, especially in that long COVID phase that you have heard about. We know that even if you have had the COVID-19 mild, you can still develop these symptoms, which is, quite concerning. So government need to be aware that the brain, as well as pretty much any other organ, but the brain in particular, and a much higher percentage, seems to be hit by COVID-19.
So the story is still the same. Stay safe, stay healthy, try to reduce contact with other people, double mask, wash your hands 30 seconds. It has been the same message for the past 17 to 18 months, and we will reiterate these messages going forward. And most importantly, talk to your people and talk to your friends that don't want to take the vaccine to take the vaccine. I have had a very unpleasant encounter that I have to appeal to a very close family member of mine to take the vaccine, even though this person is highly educated, has PhD. It's still a tough one for that one. So that's it for this particular episode. Thanks very much for watching. If you want to share some ideas, reach us out on social sites, including my own Twitter handle at IbrahimSaniNet or my own Instagram handle, same handle at IbrahimSaniNet. And let us know what you think about the show. Until then, thanks very much for watching. Until next time.